The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
And a happy Sunday night, and welcome to a special edition of SEC Talk. It's our second annual SEC Football Award Show. We debuted this type of show last year. It went well, had a lot of voters, and then went back again. Opened up the voting for a couple of days leading up to the SEC Talk Sunday night show, and here we are now. We're going to be unveiling all of the winners from QB of the year to play of the year to freshman of the year. We definitely have a lot of categories to get to. So Wade, how are you doing this week? And are you excited for you to be handing out some awards?
Yeah, we saw the big award get handed out this weekend. Jayden Daniels won the Heisman out of LSU. So I have a feeling we'll see his name on the screen a few times tonight, but we have some other really deserving candidates that we definitely need to put some respect on their name. I mean, they had a really good year in the conference. So I'm excited to see who all we got winning awards.
Yeah. We appreciate everybody for voting both on Twitter and on Facebook. I know it's hard on Facebook to vote, but Facebook got rid of their polls. So I just figured just leave a comment. I feel like that was the best thing to do it. So I appreciate everyone on the Facebook side. On the Twitter side, it was definitely much easier. You just click on the player that you thought, and it went out to the percentage. So Facebook and Twitter votes were both counted in this. So let's get right in. Before we get into our award show segment, we also had to remind our folks, if you have any questions pertaining to SEC football or the award show, maybe if you have any disagreements of who think that maybe this player should have won the award or maybe this play should have been on the player of the year, let us know and we'll get to it throughout the show. Okay, let's go on now to the next topic here of the show before we get into our bulk of the awards. Before we get to it, we got to thank our sponsors that we do. This has been our sponsors throughout the season, so we appreciate Milo Bros Golf, SeatGeek, and Fanatics. I talk about it every single week. They got some really good deals. Christmas is a couple of weeks away, so if any last-minute Christmas ideas, use these three sponsors: Milo Bros Golf. You can use code BellyUpSports, save 15% off at the checkout. SeatGeek, if you're new, SeatGeek has definitely a lot of great ticketing apps. So they range from red to yellow to green, give you the best deals there. You get 20% off of your first purchase using code BellyUpSports. And then Fanatics, we have an affiliate link. So if you want to use our affiliate link to support us and your favorite sports team. So thank you to three of our sponsors of, sponsoring this show and also sponsoring this award show. Like you mentioned, we had a big award unveiling last night. The Heisman Trophy is coming back to the SEC. Jayden Daniels wins the Heisman Trophy. I know that Wade and myself very excited for this. Chet put down some money. He won a couple of bucks, couple of $100. So congratulations to him.
Hey, so did his bookie.
Yeah, the bookie,
I'm glad I matched it a little bit. I didn't have his confidence, but I'm glad I threw a little something on it.
Yeah, but it was definitely a fun sight to watch. Obviously, the other Heisman finalists were Bo Nix out of Oregon, Michael Penix, Washington quarterback, and also Marvin Harrison Jr. So what do you think about Jayden Daniels taking home the Heisman Trophy and becoming the third LSU Tiger to take home the award?
Yeah, I think they got the right guy. I mean, statistically, he was really just phenomenal. Efficiency-wise, he was more efficient and had a higher QBR than Joe Burrow, which is just completely insane to hear as an LSU fan who watched Joe Burrow play 5 years ago, or 4 years ago. And he just really had a good season altogether. I think that if the team success had been better. I think you would have heard more hype about him all year round. But I think by the time it came down to voting, everybody just looked at the stats and they went with the big play guy, and that was Jayden Daniels. So I think they got it right. Michael Penix had an admirable effort down the stretch to get his team into the playoff. He has a lot to play for, but as an individual award, I think they got the guy here in Daniels.
Yeah, definitely. He was definitely the best player, in my opinion, in college football. If you would have told me that LSU would have had 2 Heisman Trophy winners and to come at the quarterback position in the past 4 years, I would have called you crazy, because growing up as an LSU fan, I mean, that was quarterbacks where they go to die. I mean,
Yeah.
they were just LSU. If you watched them throughout the years with Les Miles teams, you know what they wanted to do. They wanted to run the football, whether that was Fournette, whether was that Jacob Hester, Darius Guice. The list goes on and on. I mean, LSU was just bred to just run the football. So it's definitely a change of scenery here at LSU. LSU had one of the most highest explosive offenses in the 2023 season, even with the 3 losses. He joins now, the RG3s, the Tim Tebows of the world. So even if you have 3 losses, it could definitely still be done. But JD5 getting 50 total touchdowns, getting 10 on the ground, 40 through the air, having over 1,000 yards rushing. I mean, this was by far the most valuable player of college football. And the voting was close. Jayden Daniels, he had 2,000 points. Michael Penix, he had 1,700 points. So the voting was very close. So congratulations to Jayden Daniels. We'll see if he picks up any SEC Talk football awards coming up. Enough talking. That was our Heisman recap, a quick one. So let's get right into our second annual SEC Talk awards. And we're going to kick it away with the quarterback of the year. So Wade, I'm going to let you take away learning about our 4 nominees, and we're going to find out who is the gunslinger of the year in the conference.
Yeah, we had 4 very deserving candidates here, starting with Mr. Heisman himself, Jayden Daniels, as you see in the upper left corner out of LSU. He took home the most important hardware in the country, but will he withstand the test here against these other 3 quarterbacks? Carson Beck out of Georgia. I mean, all year he just played lights out. Seemed like he had Georgia on the fast track to the playoff. He got roughed up a little bit against Alabama and Georgia Tech, really. His final 2 games weren't his best, but he still had a really good season for the Bulldogs. Jalen Milroe, this is a guy who lost his starting job at some point in the season, but regained his coach's trust, and he found his way onto the Heisman ballot too. I think he finished 5th in the country in the Heisman race, so a really good effort there from Jalen Milroe. Alabama switched their attack to let him utilize his legs, and he developed as a passer throughout the season. And then Brady Cook, I think this guy just kind of came out of nowhere. He was good last year for Missouri. We featured him a little bit on SEC Talk, but he became a staple on the show. I mean, every week somebody was taking him, it seemed like, on SEC Talk. Him and Luther Burden just had a really good connection. You throw in Cody Schrader, and this Missouri offense was cooking. So, so really 4 outstanding quarterbacks here. But I think we know how this one's going to go.
Let's go ahead and unveil it.
Of the votes.
All right, so there it is. Jayden Daniels wins the quarterback of the year. Any surprises, Wade, to that?
No, I think that this was expected. I think you and I both voted for Jayden on our vote, and I think our fans agreed with it.
Yep.
Carson Beck, let's go in 4th place to first. He's on here for a reason, very deserving season, but I don't think you can say it was the most outstanding. Brady Cook, honestly, I might have given him 2nd. I just think his overall body of work was better than Milroe's, and I think he had less talent around him. But I think that Jalen also had a really good year. So no surprise there. Jayden Daniels takes home the top quarterback. He'll still be up for the Offensive Player of the Year award too. So we'll see if he goes 2 for 2.
Yeah, we'll see. So congratulations, Jayden Daniels. As you can see there, the voting, not too very close. 83.3% of the Twitter vote. And we get +1 on the Facebook vote. I wonder who voted for that one. And then 11.1% goes to Jalen Milroe. And then we had our lone Facebook viewer, one of our lone Facebook viewers get on the vote there for Carson Beck. So once again, congratulations to JD5. We'll see if the LSU gunslinger takes home any awards as the night goes on. Let's go on now to the running back of the year. And we definitely have 4 viable candidates. We'll see if it's any closer of a race than the quarterback of the year award was, or will it be another runaway? First one up is Ray Davis, the Kentucky, and he was a Vanderbilt transfer. You know, he was a very good running back for Vanderbilt. He transferred in this year to Kentucky. And like you mentioned with, Brady Cook, I feel like Ray Davis was Mr. SEC fantasy at the running back position. We took him pretty much every week of the show. He balled out. That one game I always go to was the Florida game where he had like 270 yards rushing. That was definitely insane. As much as we talked about with Devin Leary and how that this passing offense was, Ray Davis was really the star of the show. For Kentucky, Quinshon Judkins, he won an award last year. He was the freshman of the year. Judkins is back now on the running back of the year. Probably not the season that he had in hopes. You know, his freshman season was so electric. Going into year 2, it was still a pretty good season. It's good enough season to put him as one of the top 4 running backs in the SEC. So we see Judkins once again. And Cody Schrader right here for Missouri, coming off an impressive year. He took home the SEC League of Running Back of the Year. We'll see if he takes it for our show here. But Cody Schrader, I mean, this Missouri offense was clicking. You got Brady Cook, Luther Burden, Cody Schrader. That was the big 3 of Missouri's offense this year. And Jalen Wright is actually the top 4. I thought about putting Jarquez Hunter, but as a whole, Jalen Wright had an impressive season for the Tennessee Volunteers. Not the season that Tennessee had as a team, an 8-4 team, but I know that you like taking Jalen Wright, especially that UConn game where he started off with that 80-plus yard run. So those are our 4 nominees. Let's see who takes home the RB of the year in the conference. And to no surprise, it's Cody Schrader. As you can see, it was a runaway. 100% of the Twitter vote. And the Facebook crew picked Quinshon Judkins. There was 1 vote for him, 1 vote for Ray Davis. And sorry, Mr. Jalen Wright, I guess you don't have any Tennessee fans either in our Twitter or our SEC Talk Facebook page, or they're just quiet and still recovering from a not so great of a season for their Tennessee Volunteers. So what do you think of Cody Schrader taking home the RB of the year? I mean, he was an absolute dog the whole entire season.
Yeah, I like it. I like Cody Schrader to maybe even win the most outstanding player in the conference. If Jaden Daniels didn't play this season, I think he would be a runaway for that too. Cody Schrader was just a really dominant player for Missouri. I mean, in games like the Florida game and earlier in the season against Kansas State, I mean, it looked like Missouri was going to lose those ball games at home, and Cody Schrader just put the team on his back. He also played really well against Tennessee. That was probably his best overall game, and played pretty well against Florida, as you see there in the photo. So, yeah, Cody Schrader to me was, as he was here, pretty much unanimous, at least on Twitter. No problem with giving Ray Davis a little bit of love. Quinshon Judkins, I think he had a really good season too. So not surprised to see those guys pick up votes, but Schrader's the guy.
Yeah, Schrader's definitely the man. And I'm glad that at least somebody in our fan page put a vote on Ray Davis. I feel like that would have just been an absolute sin. I mean, Ray Davis, like I mentioned, he was the star of our show here in SEC Fantasy. But nonetheless, Cody Schrader takes home the RB of the year. Let's continue on with the offensive awards. Wade, take it away with the wide receiver of the year and their 4 nominees.
All right. For wide receiver of the year, we have 2 LSU Tigers here. Brian Thomas Jr. Led the country in receiving touchdowns. He had a couple against Arkansas and really evolved into a dominant pass catcher for the Tigers. And then let's take a look at the other Tiger, Luther Burden here. He plays for Missouri, and he was a part of that trio for Missouri that just really was electric this year with Brady Cook at quarterback, the aforementioned running back Cody Schrader, and then Luther Burden was the wide receiver for that team. So he had a really good year. He paced with Malik Neighbors for most of the season as the conference's leading receiver. I think Neighbors ended up edging him out. But Luther Burden really came on as a sophomore. Xavier Leggett, he really improved his draft stock for the South Carolina Gamecocks this year. I mean, this guy just looks like a tight end playing receiver, but he's fast enough to play outside and is just really a freak of nature there on offense for the Gamecocks. I think if the season had been a little bit better for South Carolina, you would hear about this guy a little bit more. But he had a fine season, really played well down the stretch in their final 2 games. And I think last but not least is Malik Neighbors. This guy just tore up college football all year. He was up for the Blenikoff Award, but did cede that award to Marvin Harrison. But let's see if he can get the award here in the SEC. Certainly, to me, was the most dominant receiver in the country. Just really turned it around from last year. I mean, this was the guy that LSU fans hated after week 1 of last year. Had 2 mistakes against Florida State. They kind of counted him off, us included. And, oh, my gosh, he just took off this year. Really exceeded expectations and will be a first-round pick this year in the draft.
Let's see it. And justice is served. The Blenikoff Award went to Marvin Harrison Jr. SEC Talk does it right here, folks. Malik Neighbors is your wide receiver of the year. As you see there in the voting, no votes for Xavier Leggett. Like you mentioned, I think that if South Carolina was a better team, he probably would have had more votes. We'd have 1 vote for Brian Thomas Jr. As much as Malik Neighbors did, I mean, Brian Thomas, he was the leading touchdown catcher for the Tigers, and in the NCAA, he had 15 of them. So he was just fine in the end zone. Luther Burden, I'm glad that he got a couple of votes too, 16.7% of the voting. Luther Burden, definitely one of the best SEC pass catchers. And then Malik Neighbors, I mean, there's really nothing to say about him. He's definitely going to be a top 10 draft pick coming into the 2024 NFL draft. 83.3% in that +1 Facebook vote. So congratulations to Malik Neighbors and the wide receiver of the year. Let's now move on to our other individual awards, which is going to be the freshman of the year. Last year, it was Quinshon Judkins. This year, we have a lot of defensive pieces here. Caleb Downs at Alabama. I mean, this, like, for a freshman, he did not play like an absolute freshman. He was definitely, you know, everyone wants to talk about Dallas Turner, especially on the Alabama defense, but Caleb Downs was definitely the star of the show. We might even see him in the defensive player of the year. Luke has the tight end for Arkansas. I know, like, this was not the season that Arkansas fans just want to forget about. You know, Raheem Rocket Sanders, he was out for a majority of the season. KJ Jefferson didn't play up to his standards. And then really the wide receivers, you didn't really see anybody, but Luke has the freshman tight end. I think that he's definitely going to be a bright future for this Arkansas offense. Torian York out of Texas A&M. Adrian Cooper is definitely also on this list too. But Torian York, the Texas A&M linebacker, he had an outstanding season for the Aggies. And Suntrain Perkins, I mean, if your last name is Perkins, you're wearing number 4, you must be pretty dang good at football. But Ole Miss is a linebacker too. So a lot of linebackers on this list. Caleb Downs was a cornerback. So let's see who takes home the freshman of the year honors for the 2023 season. And it was Mr. Caleb Downs taking home the voting. And this was probably the closest of a race. I know that if we were talking about election votings, this isn't really much of a runaway. But when we're talking about SEC talk polls, as you see there, 71.4% of the votes go to Caleb Downs. We had a tie for second place, both with Perkins and Has getting 14% of the vote. And then we had a lone Facebook vote. So any shock here of Caleb Downs taking home the freshman of the year honors?
No, I think that he was probably the best corner in the conference this year. And the last time we've seen a true freshman do that, it might have been Tarek Stingley or one of the LSU DBU players. So no surprise here, or maybe even Patrick Surtain just a few years ago who wore number 2 at Alabama. So yeah, just another good defensive back coming out of Alabama. Really exceeded expectations year 1. So I have no qualms with this pick. But for Arkansas, it's good to see Luke Haas on here. If he can stick around and give that next quarterback a good safety blanket across the middle, that would be great for the Razorbacks. Perkins, I mean, like you said, if you were number 4 and you run off the edge, good chance you're going to be a good football player. I got to see him torment Daniels in person, so deserving of some votes too. And then Texas A&M, I think this falls in the South Carolina category. Had the team been better, I think they would have gotten a little bit more national attention.
Yeah, definitely. The team factor might have been a lot of, one of the key important factors here when you think about when you were voting. But Caleb Downs is the freshman of the year in 2023. Wade, let's continue on with the defensive player of the year. Actually, before we do that, we do have the defensive player of the year. Take it away. As you see here, Caleb Downs is back on this list. So let's meet these 4 nominees.
Yeah, the freshman's going to go for the overall defensive player of the year here. That's how good of a season he did have for the Crimson Tide. And Nathaniel Watson led the conference in tackles, I believe, and his teammate, if Watson didn't, his teammate did. They had a really outstanding linebacker duo there for the Bulldogs. And one of the few bright spots for the team this year. They were stout up the middle. Debo Williams, same kind of thing. This guy was just a machine for South Carolina. If your name's Debo and you play at South Carolina, chances are you're going to be good at football, just like we mentioned with Perkins. So Debo Williams, he's a guy that they need to keep in the Garnet and Black for another year. And then Edgerrin Cooper, this guy was outstanding for Texas A&M, another one of those high-profile recruits. And we really saw these guys pan out for Texas A&M this year. So if they can keep any of them from transferring or entering the NFL, it will go a long way under their new coach.
Yeah, so those are your 4 nominees. Now let's see who takes home the DPOY. And there it is. Caleb Downs not only wins the freshman of the year, but also the defensive player of the year. And it was in the same percentage, 71.4% of the votes. Nathaniel Watson, 28.6%. And then we had one face. I'm surprised that Edgerrin Cooper didn't get it. He was definitely a beast for Texas A&M. But I guess, once again, the team is also – well, I guess the team isn't much of a factor. Mississippi State wasn't bowl eligible, and you see – 28.6% of the vote there. So how about a freshman getting the defensive player of the year as well?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely deserving. We didn't have that true, I don't know, SEC defensive.
Well, last year we had Perkins. I mean, it was just a clear runaway.
Right. Like it just, nobody stood out to me like that this year. But I think if you look at the overall body of the work, this is definitely a deserving candidate in Downs. I voted for Watson. Partially just to get some variety on the show. And I think that just having the discipline to continue to play at a high level when your team's not doing good, I wanted to reward that. But I definitely don't have an issue with Downs winning it. I agree. I thought Cooper was going to pick up some votes. But, a smaller sample size here. And maybe, like we mentioned, if A&M had a little bit better of a season, he would rise up.
Yeah, I voted for Nathaniel Watson too. I mean, just of a season that it was for Mississippi State's defense, he was definitely the bell cow of that defense. He was the leader. But I definitely agree with the public here of going with Caleb Downs. Not only get 1 award, but you bring home 2 awards. So that's always nice. So let's now move on to the offensive side of the ball with our Offensive Player of the Year nominees. And he's back on the list here, as we pretty much have the same 4 that we already see here. We had our running back of the year. We had our wide receiver of the year, our quarterback of the year already. And then we also had a Carson Beck, who was the nominee for quarterback of the year. So somebody is going to be picking up award number 2 on the night. But Cody Schrader, we already talked about him out of Missouri. He was definitely not really the face of the franchise here for Missouri, but this was definitely one of the best gets for Missouri that he had a couple of years ago, coming from Division II football and transferring to Missouri. Going into Missouri's offense this year, I mean, they were definitely one of the best in the SEC. Cody Schrader, he lit it up. I feel like every week he was going for over 100. If you want to, I'm not really want to compare him to CMC, but if you're really looking at fantasy numbers wise in SEC fantasy, I feel like every single week he was going over 100. Malik Neighbors, really nothing to be said about him. He was definitely one of the bright spots on this LSU team. There were just so many weapons around Jayden Daniels. So Malik Neighbors gets a spot on here. Carson Beck, I feel like he's going to be back next year. I think that this is just a start for him. I think that he was overshadowed with Jayden Daniels of what he did if Jayden Daniels wasn't in the league, he probably would have been, getting a lot of awards. But Carson Beck, with Brock Bowers being out for a couple of weeks, Ladd McConkey, he was also injured. So this Georgia team went through a lot of injuries, but Carson Beck had a really phenomenal season in his first year as a starting quarterback for the Dogs. And Jayden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winner, there's really no words to be said about him. So we will see who will take home the award. Will it be the Heisman Trophy award? Well, I hope that Jayden Daniels has a lot of more room for some trophies, because he already picked up 2 already tonight. And as you can see, there wasn't much of a race. Jayden Daniels, 85.7% of the votes. None for Malik Neighbors, but I got to give credit to our viewers. I mean, Cody Schrader definitely has been one of the best SEC players, 14.3%. We also had a Georgia fan. That we have a lot of Georgia fans on our SEC Talk page. So we at least had one sneak in a vote there for Mr. Carson Beck. So what do you think about Jayden Daniels taking home the Offensive Player of the Year? I'm sure it's no surprise, since the man literally just won the Heisman last night.
Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand. If you win the Heisman, you're going to win the Quarterback of the Year in your conference, and you're going to win the Overall Player in your conference award. So no controversy here. Jayden Daniels gets it done. But all these guys were deserving. I think Cody Schrader, I think all-purpose wise, playing running back, being a receiving threat out the backfield, playing a little special teams, I think you could give him the nod here. But when a player in your own conference wins the Heisman, it's hard to deny him the overall winner too. So definitely got the right guy here in Daniels.
Yep, and that's going to conclude our individual awards. Now let's shift on to the team awards, and we would go to the coaching, the most disappointing, the most surprising, and all that. So Wade, kick it away with our Coach of the Year. We'll see if one of these lovely coaches can take home this award.
Yeah, so no new face here with Nick Saban. This guy's been on every award show that's honoring coaches nationally and within the conference. But he really did a great job this year of realizing where his team was at, what kind of scheme they could run offensively, because this team was not trending in the right direction. It looked like Jalen Milroe was about to be benched. And this team was tied with South Florida 3-3 in the second quarter at one point this season. So, yeah, things were looking bleak in Tuscaloosa. Nick Saban decided to ditch the air attack offense that they had been using with Bryce Young and Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, and they went more to that traditional Alabama offense that was built around the run. And they rotated in running backs, and they used Jalen Milroe as another running back, really. So kudos to Saban for turning his team's fate around, and they're in the playoffs, so they have a chance at winning another championship. Lane Kiffin, he continues to do great things for Ole Miss. I think he's got this team on the verge of greatness. I know that they're going to hit the transfer portal hard and continue to challenge Saban and the top dogs of the SEC. A couple games didn't go their way this year. They didn't put up a good showing against Alabama or Georgia, but other than that, they handled their own. Eli Drinkwitz, this guy, like we talked about with Schrader and Cook, I mean, Missouri just was absolutely electric. They came out of nowhere. I think we both had Missouri pegged to go 7-5, 6-6. So to see this team playing Ohio State in a New Year's Six bowl game is just incredible. And I think that starts with the coach. I mean, I think this is a guy that puts it all together. He certainly got my vote. We'll see if he can take the hardware. And then Kirby Smart. I mean, you can't have a coaching show award without Kirby Smart being mentioned. This guy had the nation's longest win streak until Nick Saban and Alabama knocked off the Dogs, but another really, really good year for Georgia. He's got this team and program in great shape, and they'll be playing Florida State in the Orange Bowl for a shot at an 11-win season or a 12-win season. So,
yeah, 4 terrific coaches. I mean, these are the top 4 teams in the SEC. So let's now reveal who is the coach of the year in 2023, and it is none other than Eli Drinkwitz of Missouri. I have really no doubts about that. Nick Saban, you probably could have gone with him the way that Alabama started the season, but I don't think anybody had this Missouri team going into a New Year's Six bowl game, playing Ohio State, and possibly potentially, going to 11-2. So Eli Drinkwitz, the head coach of Missouri, and it's going to be, I don't know if they're going to do it in the offseason or not. Contract extension might be coming towards Mr. Drinkwitz. That
Absolutely
way he can buy all the drinks in the world that he can. So let's, with Eli Drinkwitz winning the award, let's see how now the viewers voted on this.
Pretty close.
Let's see how. Yeah, it was pretty dang close. I feel like this was going to be a two-horse race between Saban and Drinkwitz. Drinkwitz did get 62.5% of the voting. Saban was in second with 37.5%. Our Facebook community was both on Kirby Smart, even with the loss in the SEC championship game. If you really look at it, Georgia still had an undefeated regular season, and then Lane Kiffin. Sorry, buddy. I guess someone's on the train. But really good season for Ole Miss. I feel like a lot of people probably had more expectations for LSU. They probably didn't have Ole Miss going in 10-2, but Ole Miss, a really good opportunity to finish off a really good season against Penn State in the Peach Bowl. But congratulations to Mr. Drinkwitz, winning the Coach of the Year in the SEC. Let's continue on now with our team awards. Let's go on now to our most surprising team, and Missouri is back. I mean, Missouri is a popular team in award show.
Hardware.
Yeah, like you mentioned, both you and I had them as like a 7-5, 8-4 team. But Missouri, really a great season. Their two losses was against LSU and Georgia, two really good teams in the SEC. They finished the season 10-2. They get a date with Ohio State. Alabama, we just put them here in the most surprising team. I feel like everybody in the country, after the Texas loss and how they looked against South Florida, really just wrote them off like, the dynasty over. But Nick Saban, like he always does, 11-1, beats Georgia in the SEC champion, and they're going to be heading to Pasadena to face off against Michigan, the college football playoff semifinal. So that's a little surprising to me, so I put them on there. Ole Miss was also a surprising team. I feel like nobody really thought that they would be contenders. I think that everybody was drinking either the LSU or the Texas A&M Kool-Aid, but the A&M Kool-Aid ran out, and LSU, their expectations in the preseason fell a little bit short, but Ole Miss, really good season, 10-2, like I mentioned, going to the Peach Bowl to face it off against Penn State. So who is our most surprising team in the SEC? Let's go ahead and find out. Will it be the Missouri Tigers once again? And they're just racking up the awards. Missouri, the SEC surprise team of the year. So what are your overall thoughts on how Missouri's season went?
Yeah, I think this team is the definition of a surprise. I think that we were looking at Tennessee or South Carolina to be the team to take the leap in the East, but instead it was Missouri, and this team was led by their offense, but their defense played really well too at times, and special teams, can't forget about that. Harrison Mevis, he had a couple really big kicks, some game-winning field goals. So yeah, we'll see him in our Play of the Year segment here in just a bit. So maybe the Tigers are due for some more hardware, but let's see how that voting shook out. Oh boy, Missouri, man. They had the people's vote.
Not close at all. We had none on Ole Miss, one lone Facebook vote. But other than that, the Twitter community and the Facebook community were all in on Missouri. How do you, going in now, we're pretty much in the off season. What do you look at this Missouri team heading into the 2024 season, especially if Oklahoma and Texas join in? Do you think that they could still compete?
Yeah, I haven't seen their individual schedule within the conference, but they're going to have.
Yeah, we'll find that out on Wednesday. So
yeah, so we'll know even more so this week. You got Brady Cook coming back. That's huge. You got Luther Burden coming back, presumably. He's a sophomore, so probably about as good of a returning junior receiver as we've seen, kind of up there this year with Marvin Harrison or maybe Jamar Chase prior to the COVID season. So yeah, they got a lot of talent coming back. Cody Schrader, the heart and soul of the team, I think he's out of eligibility. But I think that the way they use the running back in this offense, they'll either grow within or they'll go get their guy, because that's a huge part of this offense. So I have a lot of faith in Missouri. I'm sure you do too. And I think this team's only going to be better.
Look, I think that we have more faith than we did in the preseason of this season. I think that we're definitely going to be more equipped making a lofty prediction of what Missouri is going to be in 2024. Missouri takes on the surprising team. Now, Wade, take it away of who of our nominees are for our most disappointing team. We go from positive to negativity.
Yeah, we don't like to be too negative on the show, but we have to cover the whole season. And these were three teams that honestly came into the season with much higher expectations than their final results. None of the three are going bowling. I would have thought at least two of the three were going bowling, probably all three. So not a good season for Arkansas, Florida, and South Carolina. I think for Arkansas, it was frustrating because you had KJ Jefferson returning, and you just felt like this team could come over the hump. Same thing with South Carolina and Spencer Rattler, but neither guy could get their team to the next level. Defensively, both teams struggled at times. And then for Florida, you brought in Graham Mertz. He played pretty well. You had a really good run game, but that defense was just not up to standards. And honestly, coaching, I think that they're learning Billy Napier might not be the guy. Miraculously, all three of these head coaches retained their jobs going into next season. So we hope that all of them can kind of rise from the bottom and have a better season next year. But we do have to dub one of them as the most disappointing team. Let's see what the fans think.
Let's see who it is. And it is the South Carolina Gamecocks. A year ago, if you flash back, they were the most surprising team. And now this year, they are the most disappointing team. So you go from one spectrum to the other. But yeah, really disappointment for South Carolina. I know that Chet was very high on him. I mean, Spencer Rattler in his final year. The offense, I mean, I feel like a lot of people drank too much of the Kool-Aid last year, the two games that they won. You know, they beat Tennessee in a couple, and then they beat Clemson in the regular season. They lost to Notre Dame. Pretty much everybody coming back. You know, you lose Marshawn Lloyd to USC, but, you know, you're bringing back Xavier Leggett. And you know, have Mario Anderson, you know, a freshman running back. He evolved into it. But Spencer Rattler, he was just not the quarterback. And then the defense really had a slow start to the season. The defense finished off the season strong, but an up and down season for South Carolina and Shane Beamer heading into 2024. This is definitely going to be a prove-it year for that coaching staff. So let's see if this was a close voting, because these were three similar teams. And look at that, folks. Very, very close. It went down to the wire. The Gamecocks got 44.4% of the vote, plus Facebook vote. The Gators come in second with 33% of the vote, and then the Hogs 22.2%. I voted for Arkansas, honestly, just because of the way that they started the season. They went 3-0, and all of a sudden, boom, you're like 3-7. So I think it was just a fall from grace for them. Arkansas, I had more expectations for Arkansas. I feel like every year that I always hype them up. Florida, I knew, you know, Billy Napier. I just don't know about that, you know, head coaching hire still. And then South Carolina, I just wasn't really on board with that. So I voted for Arkansas. Wade, who did you vote?
I voted for the Gamecocks. I just, watching this team more closely personally, I just had higher expectations. I thought Shane Beamer was the guy. Kind of seems like he got lightning in a bottle there at the end of the last season. And I think with Clemson having a down year this year, South Carolina absolutely needed to win that game. Now that Clemson can beat you again, I think that the momentum there is gone, especially on the recruiting trail. So disappointing season for South Carolina. I agree with Arkansas. I mean, you can't lose 6 straight games in the conference. That's just never good. But they were really hard matchups, and I think they were just overwhelmed. Florida, this team should be better than both of these teams year in, year out. There's a lot of resources, a lot of talent in that state. So by that definition, I would say this team probably is the most disappointing, but they had a chance to get to a bowl game in each of their last 2 ball games and couldn't get it done. So all 3 of these teams need to improve to save their head coach's job next year. And I guess the positive spin to this is South Carolina, you know, went from the cellar to the most surprising team. Missouri could have been a candidate last year. So, you know, they could turn it around.
Yeah, it could definitely turn it around. I agree with you. Like these 3 logos that you see on your screen here, 3 head coaches heading into the 2024 season that need to at least get to a bowl game. So definitely going to be a crucial 2024 season. We'll see 3 of those teams. Hopefully that we don't. I feel like Florida, they were on this list last year. Arkansas, they were not. So hopefully these 3, we don't see these 3 logos anymore. Hopefully they improve. Obviously, we're not going to put Vanderbilt on here because we know that
the expectations are low.
Yeah, I feel like we bashed them too much. I just don't want to put the Vanderbilt logo up, but the expectations for these three teams definitely did not come to fruition in the 2023 season. So those were our team awards. Now let's go on to the game awards, both of our game of the year and also of our play of the year. So take it away with our 4 games that we had that's on the game of the year nominees.
Yeah, so the first one I was at LSU at Ole Miss. Man, this one was just back and forth, a lot of offense, some poor defense, some missed tackles, as you see there on the screen. But Jackson Dart had his best game of the season. At this point, I would have voted for Jackson Dart as Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, he really went toe for toe with Daniels, and this Ole Miss team looked great, but Ole Miss wasn't able to keep that momentum against other teams. But this specific game was just great, back and forth, came down to the final play. LSU had a Hail Mary. I think they threw it up to Brian Thomas or maybe Chris Hilton.
Yeah, it was
It
Chris
wasn't
Hilton.
Neighbors. Yeah, Chris Hilton. And he was not able to come up with a grab. For LSU, I mean, the offense did their work in this game. The defense did not. But I think what we'll all remember from this one was what Jackson Dart did. And Quinshon Judkins. I mean, he had over 100 yards in this one, too.
Even the backup, Ulysses, that was him.
Ran, man. They just kept running. All right, so the second game, Alabama against Auburn. I think everybody's going to remember this one as a critical moment of the season. Auburn had their top 5 opponent rival on the ropes all game long. They're up by 20 points. And then Alabama came storming back, and all of a sudden it was a ball game. But Auburn still had all the momentum, and they were 99.9% favorites to win this ball game. Alabama punted to Auburn with about 3 minutes left in the game, and wide receiver, not Sky Moore, but
Coy Moore,
yep, was back there to receive the punt for the Tigers. Pretty end over end kick, nothing to it, and he muffs it. So Alabama recovers it, of course. Well, Auburn should still be good. There's still 3 minutes left, but Alabama needs to go down and get a touchdown. And Auburn's defense has been absolutely electric all game. They get them into a 3rd down and long. Jalen Milroe, I think, takes a sack, and it's now 4th and long. Surely Auburn's going to hold on, right? I mean, they're 31 yards away from the goal line. Have to score on this play, and Jalen Milroe has all day in the pocket because Auburn refuses to rush. And in the corner of the end zone, they get a little bit of separation, throw up a prayer. It's caught, and Auburn is shocked. I mean, their fans were ready to jump onto the field, but it's Alabama who comes out victorious. And it's kind of like one of those situations where when you let the genie out the bottle, Alabama's going to capitalize. And if you're Auburn, you muff the punt. You don't play disciplined defense. Alabama's going to take advantage of it. And I just kind of have a feeling Alabama could win the national championship now because of that play right there. So I think we'll see that specific play in our play of the year segment too. But just that play alone kind of set it to me as one of the games of the year too, because I just think it was such a defining moment of the season. But we'll see what the fans think. Florida at Missouri, this one wasn't much of a game for a while. It looked like Florida was going to pull off the road upset, but Brady Cook, he was poised and led his team down the field. Him and Cody Schrader, Luther Burden, Cooper, they all had big plays, and Harrison Mevis knocked it through for Missouri to win. I mean, for Florida, you just have to feel for them. They lost Graham Mertz earlier in the game. He had played electric before leaving with an injury, and ultimately the Gators did fall short of a bowl bid. So, and I think if Missouri loses this game, they're certainly not playing in a New Year's Six game. So it had a lot of implications. And then, Florida's a tough luck loser. They're on here again. They lost at home to Arkansas in a shootout, and both of these teams needed this one for bowl eligibility. Looked like Arkansas was going to win this game and get a little bit of momentum, but then they ended up losing out to cap off the season. But for Florida, another one that just slipped away from them at home. Their first home loss to Arkansas, but it was a thrilling one. back and forth, pretty much two evenly matched teams. But I just don't think the implications of that one had what these other three games had. But let's see what the fans think.
Hey, that was a great description. So let's waste no time and see what the game of the year was in the SEC.
Space to cover for Milroe. Still looking. Firing. Near corner. It's caught! Touchdown, Alabama!
And as Brad Nessler said, touchdown, Alabama. And that play ignited this Alabama team. Like you mentioned, I couldn't have said it myself better. I mean, this was the play that saved Alabama's season. Like, if it wasn't for this play, Alabama was not in the college football playoff. If they go on to win the national championship, all their fans are going to be circling back to that play. Like, this might be as monumental a play as it was as the kick six was back in 2013. That season, how much that play changed Auburn's season. I know that they lost to Florida State in the national championship, but that was still a huge play. But as you can see here, our fans, I feel like this was pretty easy pick there. I was surprised though with game number 2 being, Florida and Arkansas. I definitely agree with that being in second place. But go on to the voting. Alabama and Auburn got 87.5% of the voting. 33% went to Florida and Arkansas. We had one lone vote for LSU and Ole Miss. And then we also had Missouri. No love for Florida and Missouri. I guess nobody likes Harrison Mevis booting a 40-yard field goal to win it for the Tigers. But I'm guessing you and I voted for the same game of Alabama and Auburn.
Yes, I voted for Alabama-Auburn just because of the implications of what this could mean. I mean, if Alabama goes out and loses in the first round, maybe it's nothing. If Alabama lost this game, they were still going to get to play Georgia. But I think even beating Georgia, they would have missed the playoff with 2 losses. So, yeah, this was a season-saving play. It was on 4th down, pretty much as time expired. Just a phenomenal play that highlighted the game. And I don't know, just something about that rivalry. There's always something crazy. So you can always expect a good game between those two teams. I contemplated voting for the Ole Miss and LSU game. I just thought it was a really back-and-forth one. Another one that kind of set the tone of the season. But, ultimately I thought that the Alabama game was more impactful with the Tide being in the playoff.
Yeah, just put the Iron Bowl in Jordan Hare, and they're going to get some wackadoodle play that's going to happen. And we got the Jalen Milroe touchdown pass to Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond hit the James Bond celebration, and Alabama sits itself in the college football playoff. So Alabama and Auburn, the annual Iron Bowl, one of the best rivalries in the conference, goes down as the game of the year in this college football season. So we do have one more award to get to. It might just be the most important award, and that is the play of the year. Last year, it was the 2-point conversion that lifted LSU over Alabama, getting that award last year. And here we go. Harrison Mevis game-winning field goal. It was not his game-winning field goal against Florida. It was his game-winning field goal against Kansas State. This man hit a 61-yard field goal. I know that I bet on Kansas State to win this game, but honestly, I didn't care at the time because Harrison Mevis, an absolute dog this season. If you remember a couple of years back in that Auburn game, I hate to bring it to Missouri, but he missed like a chip shot field goal. It was like an overtime, and Auburn ended up winning that game. But Harrison Mevis, he was definitely one of the most clutch kickers in the SEC. When Missouri needed him, he booted that thing through the uprights. So this was honestly the start of Missouri's run here. Kansas State was ranked number 15. Missouri, this was a back-and-forth game. Missouri's defense really played one of their best games of the season. This was before Brady Cook and this offense really got going. But Harrison Mevis, with the seconds ticking down, he hits a 61-yard field goal, and the fans stormed the field. And that's what started this Missouri run to 10-2. The next one was Jaden Daniels, one of his, multiple touchdowns that he had against Florida. For this one was the 85-yard rushing touchdown where they did a little read option, and once he cut that corner, he was gone. Nobody was catching him. Jaden Daniels put on the wheels here. But I just really had to pick something from this Florida game because he had over 300 yards passing and 200 yards rushing. Could have gone with the 52-yarder, but you got to go with the 85-yarder. That really
85 is a lot of yards.
Yeah, for that LSU offense against Florida. like we mentioned, this is to no surprise. Jalen Milroe game-winning touchdown to Isaiah Bond. A lot of implications that it had for Alabama making it to the college football playoff. When you're in Jordan-Hare, something's going to be crazy. Going back to the 2013 season with all the crazy plays that Auburn had, I feel like Alabama maybe, they rubbed the genie in the bottle, and Alabama came away with a late victory in the Iron Bowl. And the last one was Ricky Pearsall. Pearsall, could have been – he was definitely one of my honorable mentions for the wide receiver of the year. He was definitely a talented receiver for the Gators. But here, a game-winning touchdown with 24 seconds. Graham Mertz looked to Ricky Pearsall for a 25-yard touchdown to shock the Gamecock faithful in Williams-Brice Stadium, to send them home crying as Florida ended up winning this game. So with the 4 nominees, let's see who will take home the play of the year. Let's roll the footage.
Caleb Jackson is his running back, and Daniels pulls it, takes it himself. He's got the sideline. Jaden Daniels off to the races. And a bend back inside. He takes it to the house.
Well, I guess this was just the year of Jaden Daniels, because I did not see this one coming, but Jaden Daniels' 85-yard touchdown run against the Florida Gators. Are you surprised by this vote?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I saw this play live in person, and it was absolutely insane. But I think that the defining play of the conference and of the season was that Auburn and Alabama game with the Isaiah Bond touchdown. As I mentioned on the previous award, I just think that play made it the game of the year. I mean, the game itself was kind of a snooze fest until Alabama turned on the Jets late and made the big play. But Jaden Daniels, I mean, if you're watching his Heisman highlights in 10 years, 20 years, I mean, that's the play that's going to stand out. So no problem with it being awarded there. If we factored in the Facebook votes on the overall percentage, it might be very close between these two, but I think Daniels would have still gotten the nod. But those 2 plays were outstanding. Harrison Mevis, I mean, he set the SEC record for field goal.
I'm going to give him a pity vote. This man deserves at least one.
I mean, that was impressive. I just felt like the Auburn-Alabama play really defined the whole season for the country. But a 61-yard field goal, that's NFL material. And Pearsall, this guy had a really good year. Great game-winning catch against South Carolina, but I just don't know if you can say it defined the season.
I believe Mevis has 1 more year eligibility, so we'll see him back here kicking some
knocking him back for another year
for Missouri. But yeah, this was definitely one of the closer ones. Like you mentioned, the Facebook votes was pretty consensus there. But even with that, if you really do the math here, it was probably 57 to it was very, very
probably
close.
Within a few percentage points.
Yeah, it would definitely close. But Jaden Daniels, I mean, you win the Heisman and you win 4 of the couple of categories that we had. So that's going to wrap up our second annual SEC Talk Football Award Show. We appreciate everybody that took the time out of their day to either leave a vote on their Twitter account or also our Facebook page. We really appreciate it. That's really, y'all make the show. I mean, the votes go into this, and we let our fans like to do some interaction here. So next week we will be back to continuing our bowl preview. If you were with us last week, we started with the non-New Year's Six. Now we'll turn our attention to the New Year's Six bowl games. Not only will we talk about the SEC, we have Alabama in the college football playoff, but we also have Georgia, Ole Miss, and Missouri will be heading on to the New Year's Six bowl games. So we'll be talking about every single one. We'll also be continuing our SEC fantasy draft. We'll see which faces. Maybe we'll see, one of these faces here that in our award show. So that will be a full. Also, we'll be doing a little bit of a recap of the schedule release for the 2024 season that comes out on Wednesday. We'll talk a little bit about that before we get into that. So that is going to be our next show. So we appreciate everybody tuning in, and we hope that everybody enjoys the rest of your week. So long for now, and we will see you back here next Sunday night.